Hey there, folks. We thought as we were finishing up this kind of brief overview of the Constitution, some of these founding documents, that might be fun to take a look at our nation's capital. Much like Jefferson Smith in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, it is a treat to get to go see, even if it is a virtual experience, Washington, D.C. If you ever get an opportunity to go, it is a fantastic place full of history, lots of different things that you can see and do. I would encourage you, if you do get a chance to go, to contact your congressman. They can open a lot of doors for you, get you into certain federal buildings, that sort of thing. But like I said, there's lots of different history, and so we're just going to look real briefly at some of it, and then we've got a little activity that you're going to do that's going to fill in the rest. This is the U.S. Capitol building that you see in front of you. This is where Congress meets. Um, so one wing to one side is the Senate, one wing is the House of Representatives. What you're seeing there is the Capitol Rotunda. Sometimes when important people pass away, they lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda. John Lewis, um, who was a member of our legislative branch from Georgia, and a civil rights icon, just laid in state there in this past summer. This is August 2020 when I'm doing this. But Rosa Parks laid there so people could pay their respects. Former presidents will do that as well. There are also very famous paintings and statues that are all throughout the United States Capitol. It's definitely a great place to go and see. They just built a brand new visitor center underground at the Capitol that's got a museum and that sort of thing. It's all a very cool place to go visit. The District of Columbia, as you can see here on the map, um, today in 2020 is not situated in the middle of the country. It is where it is because of something called the Compromise of 1790. Basically, what they wanted to do is they wanted a place for the capital of the country. It had been very briefly in Philadelphia, it had been in New York, but they wanted a place dedicated to the capital. Um, and this was part of a deal between Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton wanted the United States to absorb all of the debt that the states had accumulated during the Revolutionary War. He wanted to do this to establish credit around the world. So it was important for his financial system for that to be for that to happen. Virginia, though, had paid off all of their debts already, and so they weren't real happy about now having to turn around and pay off the debts of other states who had not been as fiscally responsible. And so, in exchange for absorbing those debts, they agreed that the capital would be placed on land in between Maryland and Virginia. They both donate a little bit, and that would be where the nation's capital rested. That also did mean that our capital was in a or given the land was given by two slave states, and so slavery was legal in Washington D.C. Up until the point where it is outlawed with the 13th Amendment. But that's how Washington D.C. Gets where it is. Um, the city of Washington, the land was actually surveyed by George Washington. If you remember, we said that was a skill that he had, um, was being a surveyor, something he did as a young man. And so he lays out the city. Pierre Charles L'Enfant is the man who designed the city. He wanted it to be a place with wide open spaces. If you look at the city of Washington, the map, it has a very distinct map that you'll see here in a little bit, but he laid it out the way that it would eventually be. This, of course, is the Washington Monument. It honors our first president. you can see, if you look real close to the picture, the Washington Monument, the stone that they're using to build it changes color. And that was because of a pause during the Civil War, and then coming back and finishing up with a later um, stone that was brought later from the same place. You can also see this very well in the wonderful movie Spider-Man: Far From Home. Um, or actually, I think this one may be Spider-Man: Homecoming. You know what? I think it's Spider-Man: Homecoming. How am I mixing up my Marvel movies that you don't care about anyway? But that is features prominently in the end of the first of the new Tobey Maguire Spider, or not Tobey Maguire. What's the kid's name? I'm not remembering it right off the top of my head, but he's a wonderful young man, a great actor in Spider-Man, and you need to check it out. And Spider-Man saves some people at the Washington Monument. This is the White House. The White House was first called the Executive Mansion. This is where the president lives. Now, it doesn't look well. I mean, it's a big kind of mansion type of house, but there are a couple of different floors. The top floors are the residence, so that's where the president and his family or her family live there at the White House, and then below are some really fancy rooms where they have state dinners and things like that, that have a whole lot of old American paintings and furniture and those sorts of things. One of the things your congressman could hook you up with if you ever go to Washington, D.C., is a tour of the White House. It's a neat place to go through and see. Oftentimes, when you hear about the White House, you hear about the West Wing. And the West Wing you don't get to see, but it's actually an extension here you can't see from the picture we've got. But it is where the Oval Office is and the offices of people who work there in the White House for the president. And so this is when we look at kind of the executive branch of government. This is the hub. There's a rose garden that First Lady Melania Trump just did a little bit of a redesign on as I sit here and record this on in 2020. So it's supposed to be debuting this week. This is the Supreme Court building. The Supreme Court building sits across the road from the Capitol building. This is where, of course, the Supreme Court meets. It is a cool place to go see as well. You can go in here and actually, if they are having arguments in the Supreme Court, you can stand in line and go in and sit and listen to some of the arguments there that the Supreme Court is hearing. This was the last one of kind of these big three, the Capitol and then the White House and then the Supreme Court. It was the last one to be built. The Supreme Court actually met in a room in the United States Capitol. And so if you take that tour, they take you in there so you can see it. But now they've got their own big, fancy building, which has got portraits of former justices around, arrayed around the room as well. So a neat place to go check out. This is a different view of the Capitol. It gives you kind of a better view of just how long the building is. Like I said, one of these wings is the Senate, one is the House of Representatives. There are some office buildings or office space in the Capitol, but there are also office space to either side of it on different blocks, and there are tunnels that the congressmen and women can take to get to the Capitol if the House of Representatives is in session or the Senate is in session, and they are required to be on the floor. So I remember walking around Washington, D.C. the last time I had a chance to go, though, and I actually passed a couple of congressmen just out walking along the road. Of course, for most of them, they're not famous enough that if they weren't yours, somebody would maybe know who they are. This is the chamber of the House of Representatives. This has to hold 435 people because that's how many representatives we have. This is also the chamber where the State of the Union address in late January, early February every year happens. You can see the seats up above. That's the gallery. So if you ever get to go see the chamber of the House of Representatives, that's where you go and sit, and you can see them conducting business. if they are in there doing that. But that's where those delegations are going to sit. This is the Senate building. Of course, we only need 100 seats for senators. So as you can tell, the room isn't as big or as packed, but still kind of a neat room. A lot of the business of being a representative or a congressman or a senator doesn't happen in the chambers of the Senate or the House. That would be where votes happen or sometimes debates on the floor. A lot of the business is taken care of in these guys' offices as they're writing bills or um, coming to compromises, things like that, to get things done. So this would be like a place if they were having a vote on something, you'd expect to see the senators or congressmen in these particular rooms. Washington, D.C. is full as well of presidential memorials. The one on the top left that you see is the Lincoln Memorial. This is, of course, to our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. There's an enormous statue in there. If you have seen Night at the Museum, Attack at the Smithsonian, I think that's what it's called. Statue of Abraham Lincoln comes to life. In real life, this is on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial where Martin Luther King delivers his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. But an extremely impressive monument as you walk up. You're just taken aback by how big the statue of President Lincoln is. The one on the top right is the Jefferson Memorial. And so this is a memorial to our third president and the author of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson. You can just make out the statue of President Jefferson that sits in the middle there. One of the newer ones is a memorial to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, our president during the Great Depression and World War II. The only man ever elected more than twice to be president of the United States. He's elected 4 times. So there are 4 different sections of the memorial as you go through, showing different parts of his presidency. He is also shown in a wheelchair in one part of the memorial. He was our first disabled or disabled president or president with disabilities, and that was put there. They discussed it back and forth and said, no, that's an important message for people to be able to see. There are also war memorials in Washington, D.C. The very top one is the Korean War Memorial. In the early 1950s, that conflict. The one on the bottom right is a piece of the Vietnam War Memorial Wall. Has the name of every soldier who died in Vietnam. I have a cousin whose name is there. If you know people that did that, you can go and you can find the line in the piece of the wall where they are and see their name. One of the newer ones there, bottom left, is the World War II Memorial, and it is massive, impressive, gorgeous. It is a very, very neat thing to see. There's also a new memorial to Martin Luther King there, his first civilian to have um, a, uh, a monument on what they call the mall there in Washington, D.C. And that's just kind of the big stuff. In the activity you're going to do, we're going to explore things like Ford's Theater, where President Lincoln was assassinated. That's a neat place to go visit. The Library of Congress, my favorite building in Washington, D.C. It is just a gorgeous, gorgeous building that's there. There's also there's a mint there, so you can go see how they make money. The Pentagon, the world's biggest office building and the home of the Department of Defense, is in Washington, D.C. You could go and spend 2 or 3 weeks and not see everything that was there, especially if you decide to visit our National Museum, which is the Smithsonian. And I'm going to send you out looking for some things that are in there as well. The Smithsonian has tons of different museums, different types that you can see and experience large parts of the American story. So that's a little overview of DC. You're going to do a little activity for us in kind of exploring a little bit more of the city. I hope you have fun. Hope that it inspires you one day to get yourself out there if you haven't had a chance to visit yet.